Welcome back to the channel. I've only got a few moments of light left, so I thought I'd come out and throw out a video. We still got lots of snow here at the Manti Homestead. Anyway, welcome everybody back. Want to have a discussion on the birds and the bees and redundancies coming up. Okay, welcome back to Bunnyville, because when bunnies work, they work good. I mean, there's a reason why they have a reputation, right? So, oh my God. Let's see if I can video this or not. So down there, I'm not gonna let it open. Cat, get out of here, seriously. We can't have this be a cannibal video. Hey, anyway, brand new babies in there. But I do already know that we have them in this very last, right there. So that is 2 more litters of bunnies that you haven't seen. Sorry I didn't go in there and expose them, but they're not pretty. They look like flipping rats. But anyway, this is very successful. So what is that? We've had 5 sets of bunnies so far. And these little ones are still hiding. So I know I have footage of them, so I'll hurry and splice it in here so you can see them. Okay, I thought we'd start today's discussion out here with Miss Splash. She's just hanging out in the mud. Boy, that's not a very good picture of her. God, she is looking fat. Can I zoom in? Dang it, I can't. Can you see how fat she is? Sorry, that's a rude thing to say of a lady. She's looking plump. Oh, that probably doesn't work either. If Becca sees this video, like seriously, I'm gonna be in deep trouble. She's looking large and with child. So as you know, I've already bragged about this, but I am pretty much a cattle baron at this point. I'm going to double my herd this year. We are going to go from 1 head of cow to 2 head of cow. Here in just a few days, on the 18th, Miss Splash will be having her baby. And that's exciting. So I have mentioned this before, but her little baby, which will be a miniature Jersey. So I know Splash doesn't look Jersey, but she is. She definitely looks miniature, and you can tell that. But her little baby will be brown with the beautiful marks and miniature, all this good genetics, and worth so much money. And the reason I'm squinting here is because Becca's told me if it's a girl, that we're gonna keep it. I would really like to sell and get some money back, but whatever. So we'll have 2 milk cows. There's a reason for this. So talking about the birds and the bees and redundancies, let me tell you what I mean. So when we got Splash a few years ago, we were so excited because when we got her, she was already pregnant. And so all that we had to do is feed her, and she was gonna have a baby and she'd be in milk. But guess what? Splash wasn't pregnant. And guess what else? We don't have a bowl. Do you think this little homestead could handle a bowl? No. So we had to go and try to get her pregnant. We did so artificially with a couple of straws, took 2 attempts. First one didn't work, second one finally worked, and a little bit of money, a lot of inconvenience, whatever. So finally she gets to be pregnant. Okay, we can handle this. Homestead life is easy. Well, then she has her baby and she gets into milk. And I tell my wife, I will buy you a pump. But my wife wants to like completely handle milking manually with Miss Splash. Whatever, to each their own. So we start milking and my kids just love it. Jersey milk, fantastic. And yes, she is a Jersey. I know she doesn't look like it, but she's a Jersey. And so all the kids get used to it. We had milk everywhere, homemade ice creams. Who knew that yogurt was good? I didn't, but Splash homemade yogurt was amazing. My little baby would ask for cow milk, which meant not milk that came from the store with the red lid. It meant milk that came from the big glass jug. So everything's great. Wow, homestead life is so cool. And then Splash gets sick, and we didn't know what was going on. She wasn't eating, and her milk supply just dwindles. My cousin, who's a vet, comes over, and we figure out she has this issue with her stomach, where the stomach bloats and twists and kind of like rises up and creates an issue. Sorry, I don't know the terminology. If you know, go ahead and put it in the comments. I'm new at this. I've only been a cow baron for like 3 years now. So anyway, it was scary because a lot of times you lose your cow. And so her milk just kept drying up, and we had the vet over, and they had to cut underneath her stomach, reach in, grab the stomach that it had bloated up, and pull it down, and then literally stitch it to the bottom of her belly. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, first of all, after all the investment in corrals and gates, oh my God, we have so many flipping gates here at the Manti Homestead. I mean, if you start counting them and count the money, you'll see, there's another one right there. You'll see why I want to sell this baby and get some of my money back. Anyway, after all this investment, she could have died. And then what? Then we have to find another miniature Jersey. And do you know what it's like trying to find a miniature Jersey in the middle of the last 3 years with everybody freaking out over the sickness and the shutdowns and the supply chain? It's near impossible. So anyway, we were worried that she was going to die. Well, she didn't die. She got healthy, and her milk supply, which had almost dropped off to nothing, you know, built back up slowly. All right, Miss Homestead's here, so we're going to get some good numbers for you. Hey, when Splash had her surgery, do you remember what the stomach thing was, the issue that, like what it was called? An inverted that was impressive. Okay, so her milk dried up to, do you want me to video you? Sorry, you don't get to see her. So her milk supply went from what to what?
0. I had to bottle feed the calf.
So for a while, it went to 0.
Yeah.
But then you build it back up after we got the surgery to what? I mean, it's hardly any, but like, what was it?
She came back in full.
And so how much were you getting?
At the height of it, 2 gallons.
We have 10 of those little tiny ones, and they're so wild. So sorry. I came in and like 5 of them just scampered. For some reason, they're not afraid of Becca. Okay, Miss Homestead came out. She just got home and she corrected my memory of what happened. So here is the real correct rest of the story. After her surgery, her milk had actually dried up to 0. And we had to like bottle feed her calf for a while. And that's when we weaned the calf because, well, there was no milk. She got the surgery, and then in really kind of a miraculous manner, her milk did come back. So we lucked out. The milk came back, and it slowly dwindled after that because we cut the calf off. We were doing a calf share where we would milk and then we'd give the calf the rest. So she was getting continuous stimulation, which increases the milk supply. So because of her health issue, and then secondly, because we separated the calf later on in the game of necessity, her milk supply, even though it rebounded after surgery, fell off. And we're like, crud, we kind of made some mistakes in the calf share with the amount of production that we wanted. Okay, hopefully all this is making sense. What I'm getting at is that we did not foresee that our cow would almost die. And second, we didn't foresee that in changing the calf share situation, that her milk would dry up. So here we had an expensive cow And we had all this investment and had all this interest in her amazing milk. And suddenly we found ourselves without. Okay, well, no big deal. Just breed her again. Okay, we did. A little inconvenient, but we went and bred her again. And then you wait 9 months. And then you can get milk again. So that investment, you know, we've been without milk for 9 months. And that's why we are creating a redundancy. So we are now going to look at, well, let's look at 2 milk cows. We can alternate, but then also if we run into an issue, we've got a backup plan. We have a redundancy. See how important that is? Because you can have the full setup, you can have the corrals and the gates, and you can have a whole bunch of feed like stocked up and be all ready for the zombies to come and the end of the world. And your cow could get bloated or she could lose her milk. So for us, we're going to double our cow. You know, what can you do in your lifestyle and in your homestead? Maybe you don't have a milk cow, but what are you doing and what is your backup to what you're doing? We call that a redundancy. Okay, speaking of redundancies, let's talk rabbits for just a second, since we got rabbits everywhere. I mean, seriously, it's raining rabbits. Like, I just barely went and looked in the coolers, and we have a second set. So that makes a total of 5 litters, kits, whatever, of rabbits this year. Yay, wow, Nate, it's so successful. How do you do it? Your homestead's perfect. Okay, let me give you a reality check. Last year, all the conditions like this were just perfect. Everything was good. We had, I think at that time, 7 does and we had 1 buck. And it's getting right to this time when a little bit of warmer temperatures and Thumper the rabbit decides that he's loving life and he goes and finds all the misses and all of a sudden you have babies everywhere. Wow, homesteads are easy and cool until Thumper dies. Literally, that's what happened last year, right at the time of peak breeding season. So it would have been the end of March or April. Our buck, out of nowhere, just died. So we had all these does, and we had got maybe 1 or 2, you know, sets of babies or something. I don't know the numbers. But then our buck had died. And so all of these plans that we had to have lots of baby bunnies didn't happen. I'm like literally the only bunny breeder in the world that had a problem with breeding bunnies, because it's pretty hard to do when there's no buck. And so something we've changed here at our homestead is one of these guys is the buck. I'm pretty sure it's that one right there. But we have a second one. We have buck number 2. That's why there's always a second guy up there. And I mean, honestly, if we took buck number 1 and put him up there and put buck number 2, I mean, we would be not raining cats and dogs, but raining rabbits, because he has been locked up, being fed and watered, but without doe rabbit for a year. So the point here is that we've got a redundancy. I learned my lesson. So maybe just the thought, what can you do in your homestead to create redundancies? For us, with the rabbits, it's having a second rabbit, second buck rabbit. Does that make sense? Capiche? So one more addition to the homestead. Check out my new beehives. Well, they're Becca's new beehives. So she is going to be doing the bar beehive system. And I'm lying to you if I pretend to know what that means. I just know she wanted them and I picked them up, and so here they are. They're even painted this beautiful blue color. You know, you got to be Vogue if you're a homesteader. Strike the pose. Is that cool or what? So this is actually set up to be, there's a name for it. All of you bee people, put it down in the comments. It's set up to where you put your honeycombs in flat. The one little thing I think I do know about the bar system, the bar hive, is that pretty much your you count on the bees to create their own honeycomb going downward and their own honey in their own comb. Because most of the time, you know, you get those little panels, those little square prefabricated comb. Becca doesn't want to do that. I don't know why. I don't ask questions. I have my weird interest, which are many, and she has her few. Hers always work. I'm about a 40% success rate, but that's okay. I'm hyperactive. Anyway, so we will do some videos on that, but this ties right into redundancy. We've had mason bees, and maybe I'll disclose in this video what I did to those that are not. And last year we had honeybees that made their way into the greenhouse, but we want to encourage more of that because a big greenhouse needs lots and lots of pollinators. So this is us creating redundancies by bringing more bees to the homestead. Okay, and now in the greenhouse for a little bit of redundancy talk. And maybe we'll get into birds and the bees in here as well. That's kind of the theme. Oh, first things first though. It's like 32 degrees outside and 65 degrees in the greenhouse. I'm not gonna bore you with a whole bunch of plant updates, but it's awesome. It feels so dang good in here, not gonna lie. What I wanted to talk about in here for redundancies is, you know, with pollination, I get that question a lot. What do you do for pollination? And we've talked about how the birds actually help with pollination, especially on, you know, some of those self-pollinating plants. Self-pollinating, but yeah, pollinate, no. You still have to encourage pollination in self-pollinating plants. So like a tomato, for example, this is not a tomato, I know it's a pepper. You know, sometimes you just have to go over and simply shake and just have that pollen fall in and do some pollinating. The birds are very helpful because they just go in and agitate a lot of that. And they eat the aphids, that's why we have them. But what we also did in here during the winter is we had some mason bees in here. And mason bees are actually a little bit better or as well a pollinator as honeybees. They don't give you honey, but they pollinate, and that's what we need. And so we had, we got some, I don't know if you call them larvae, but like they came in this tube and they were hatching and they were coming in our greenhouse right at the start of the winter. And then, like an idiot, I learned more by mistakes than by being like some brilliant savant. Devin had his fish ponds, and I'm pretty sure we drowned our mason bees. We had one that hung around for a few months, and he actually pollinated the living tar out of things, but he too might have succumbed in the great waters. So I learned from that. I'm like, okay, well, what happens if you kill your mason bees, right? So we are going to reintroduce mason bees back into the greenhouse, especially now that I've done this project and given them, even here, you can't see because I'm doing this a little late, but I've got some metal screening on there, so if a bee went there, it wouldn't drown, or at least less likely to drown. So I'm now ready to have mason bees, and so we're going to reintroduce them since the great massacre of the first bunch. So, okay, back to redundancies. How do we pollinate? Birds are going to help us. The bees are going to help us, the mason bees. But in addition, we are getting a new hive of honeybees. So two actually honeybee hives, and we're going to have them on the outside of the greenhouse. Now, that doesn't help me during the winter, but stay tuned because next year I'm going to bring one of those hives in. I told Becca, you can have one outside because that's what she wants to do. But I might bring one of those honeybee hives inside the greenhouse and see if we can have honeybees year-round in here. I don't know. If it doesn't work, I'm out $134 in that second hive because that's about how much they cost. But I want to have redundancies. Now, if for some reason that doesn't work, we'll just do what we did this year, which most of it self-pollinated, And some of the bigger things, like we actually had some watermelon at the end of the season after we had closed things up and the honeybees were no longer coming in and out of the greenhouse. We were hand pollinating the bigger things like the spaghetti squash, the jumbo pink squash, and the watermelon that were growing after the bees had left us. So that's a redundancy. I don't know if I ever showed you this, but we have the meshing in our windows when we open. It's robust enough that the birds can't fly out, but large enough, you see my pinky in there, that the honeybees can actually come in and out. And that worked fantastic because those honeybees found us at the end of the season and they just pollinated the whole place. Additional redundancies for pollination we have in here, I've mentioned before, we have leaf bugs, praying mantises. We try to introduce good bugs, which inadvertently will pollinate just by them being little critters and creepy things that crawl around. They pollinate. So that's some redundancies here in the greenhouse. I've learned from sad experience that you need to have a backup plan to your backup plan. Otherwise, you're going to be getting a paintbrush and you're going to be pollinating hundreds and hundreds of plants. Let's go. Thumpity thump thump, thumpity thump thump, look at Thumper go. Thumpity thump thump, thumpity thump thump, over the hills of snow.